So here's a new paper model I'm starting. It's an Avro 504K by a group called Answer. And just like usual, you open this up and you can see the model and the parts associated with it. So you can go in and you can see what parts constitute the ailerons or the struts or the cowling or whatever. Most complicated thing is probably the landing gear. And you can see there's a picture of the cowling or the cockpit area. And then here I'm just trying to show you the basic coloration of all the parts. There's some instrument panels, there's the fuselage, and there are the seats, those little gray pieces up there, and the prop blades are those beige pieces. There's the main skid, that wooden looking piece, skinny piece, that's that main skid. And the wings, the interplane and cabane struts. There's some ailerons and the elevators. Look good. There's the interior pieces and parts of the engine. And this is a simpler model than like the Fokker triplane, but it's still going to turn out nice. There's a little area showing you the little wires you're going to have to bend in a 1-to-1 scale, and then there's ribs and interior parts. So, started by doing, as usual, pieces that need to be backed with balsa were backed, like these formers, and I'm trying to get them onto that middle cockpit piece and figure out where they go. And you can see that once they go on, they will fold up along the side. So I'm testing these. They have balsa on them. I'm checking to see how they fit, what do they look like. And it turns out, for instance, they're a little thick. So they are too wide for that little white strip you see. So I take my little blue tack and my sanding block, and I go ahead and sand those. And you had to do that with everything that's necessary. There's a forward former. It was still a little thick. It also needed to be sanded. I don't show a lot of this because that basically is boring watching me sand, but you get it to the right thickness. And then there's a middle piece that's going to go in there. And you'll fold up the sides of this. And this is going to be the first steps of getting this thing together. Now the middle one has to have another side associated with it, a picture. So what they've done is they have taken the same coloration. They're faking what it looks like. There's no interior. It's just dark, and you just plop that on there. In fact, those pieces have on them suggestions of a rudder bar. There's no rudder bar associated with no three-dimensional piece. That's the seat cushion, or the bottom of the seat, and there's two of them. It's a two-seater, so you got to sand that little sucker down to the right thickness. And then these are the backs, which actually I think are pretty correct. So as usual, roll them with my ever-present Prismacolor piece pencil. And then I, holding with the forceps, and I add glue around the outside edge of the seat. And I match up one end, and the fit, by the way, is excellent so far. I built a couple of Answer models before, and they were actually really well designed and simple, but nice. And then put that together, hold it for a few seconds, and there's a seat. Second one's same thing, so I spared you all that pain. Now these are the little pieces that elevate the seat. And when they've been scored, they are just basically rectangular, and they got a white tab on the end, and I'm putting a piece of glue on there. And these are going to come together and form little rectangles, and those are going to just be elevated and on the floorboards, and they're what elevate, glued to the floorboards, and then they're what's going to elevate the seats to the right height. So there's one, and there's the other side, and you can see that's what it looks like before you bend it. And then there's little lines where you shows you exactly where to bend it. So I put this together exactly like the other one. And there's the floor and the sides, the main components. And the diagonal part is what goes on the forward. So there I test fit it, looks good, added some glue, and put that in. Take your time, make sure it's square, press it, make sure it looks like a little rectangle. And then I put the other one in as well. And the seats will ultimately fit right like that. And they'll be the beginnings. There's still a place to put like put a control stick, but I decided to start gluing in the formers, and I started with the middle one. The fit is, again, excellent, so the edges come right where they're supposed to, along the fold line on the side of the paper. And that one's glued in. And then I put in the rear one, and it went in nicely. Just making sure it's good and solid. And you can see those white parts on the paper. That's where they're going to fold up, and actually that's where you're going to glue things. I think that has to be fairly square, so I just kind of make sure it's square. And then I put in the front one. Same drill, put it in, and carefully glue it on the bottom and make sure it's ready. And again, you just want to make sure everything is nice and even. And there you go. I decided why not put the seats in at this point, because I can put the joysticks in later. And then I start to test fit the sides and make sure they come together. And then I discover that I'm a moron, because as you put these up, you'll notice the front piece needs to be canted forward. So I cant that forward, and everything turned out once I realized that one has to lean the forward piece. But then I start putting some glue along the edges of the formers, just to, I did the middle former first, and the front former, and I did one side at a time. There's no reason to rush this stuff. Then carefully fold it up, make sure it matches along where it's supposed to. It's obvious where they attach because of the way the printing is made. And you make sure that everything sticks together and stays where it's input. And then once you get one side on, you can start on the other side. And it's just a matter of carefully holding things together. And then there I am doing the other side. So there's that diagonal, or the piece that has to be leaned forward, the front bulkhead and in the front cockpit. And then I got the middle one that has angles cut into it. And then I go ahead and fold these up and attach them carefully, just as we did before. I left the rear one open because it's easy to actually slide in next. You'll notice a little bit of bowing going on the edges, but I think that'll straighten out once we actually insert this into the cockpit area. See, that piece just comes up. You can see that little piece that's cut out down there, that little triangular piece. Put some glue on each side of the former, and then just slide it on up. And fits really well, and you end up with this little box, which is just the beginning. Well, sadly, not really sadly, looking at pictures of the real airplane, the cockpit has a lot more stuff going on in it, and there's a fair amount of, I think, inaccuracy. So I might add a few little things to make it a little more interesting. There's a lot of good documentation on this airplane. Anyway, just make sure it's all together. Make sure it is straight, which it is. And there are little instrument panels, which again aren't really, I don't think, the right shape based on what I've seen in pictures. But they're going to go in front there, and I might modify them. Overall, it's a really good start.